Welcome back to the Restaurant Growth Show podcast. Today, we are joined by Tim Sernett, a CPA specializing in restaurant financial management with over 30 years of experience. Founder of Financial Optics, Tim enhances restaurant operational efficiency and profitability through expert financial strategies. Tim, welcome to the show. How are you doing today?
I'm doing great. Thanks, Gordon. Happy to be here and look forward to the discussion.
Great. Listen, Tim, before we jump in, why don't you tell us a little bit about your background and your journey on starting Financial Optics and how you got to where you are today?
Yeah, my background, I was raised by an entrepreneur, raised by a business owner, not in the restaurant industry. He was in the retail industry in the Midwest. I'm from Kansas City. Long story short, right after I decided to come back to the business, after a short journey in public accounting with larger public accounting firms, I didn't think that's what I wanted to do. Decided to go back to my father's business. And within 2 years after that, Walmart swept through his territory and more or less wiped us out. So I've always been a big supporter of small business, and that kind of just solidified that the rest of my career, the only thing I want to do is support small business owners. So when I decided to start my own accounting firm, which is right after that experience, the focus was entirely on working with small business owners and helping small business owners understand the finances so that no matter what comes their way, they can survive it. Over the course of time, my entire exposure to the restaurant industry has been as a result of landing restaurant clients and working closely with them over time. And long story short, sold my tax practice about 4 years ago. And at that time, finally decided to listen to all the marketers telling me there's riches in the niches. And just with my experience with our clients and talk to my team, and our favorite clients were restaurants. At that time, we decided that that was going to be solely our growth focus. The only new clients we will onboard and work with are independently owned restaurants. So that's who we're looking for, full service, independently owned restaurants.
That's fantastic.
Maybe more than you bargained for, but that's my story.
I'm sure there's more to it. I'm absolutely positive. So it sounds like we got a good idea as what it has inspired you to focus on restaurant financial management. Did you want to expand on that a little bit?
Part of the reason to niche with independently owned restaurants is we saw that a lot of independent restaurants are family-oriented businesses, which is what I came from, and that's part of my values as well. And that's who we saw we could impact, those smaller 1, 2, 3, 4, maybe 5 location independently owned restaurants. They do very well with the food, the quality and the food they bring out to their customers and the customer experience, but that financial core side of the business they sometimes struggle with. And that's where we can really have an impact. So that's what we look to do when we bring them on, is educate them on how do you understand the finances of your business? How do you become a professional business owner on the financial side of your business? What are the key metrics you need to track? And what systems or processes can you implement to improve those metrics?
It's its own language, that's for sure. Lately been meeting with a financial advisor and, not just with restaurants, but with my own finances. And it's like, oh my goodness, there's just so much to learn. It's its own language. But thus far, Tim, what's been the most rewarding part of this journey for you?
Seeing our clients improve the financial strength of their balance sheet. The balance sheet is where you really see the financial health of the business, and seeing them understand what that means, what profitability means to improving the health of your balance sheet, and seeing them actually doing that over time. Most independent restaurant owners experience a bottom line net profit in the 3 to 5% range. That is very thin and very tough to build a sustainable business on that low net profit percentage. The big boys, the big guys, are shooting for minimum 15%, and they look for 20% bottom line net income. When you hit that level, then you have a sustainable business. Then you can look at opening up a second, third, fourth location. Let's get the first location set up correctly and understand how that business builds a successful, sustainable financial system.
Absolutely. So 2 things. Number 1, please do get nerdy. We welcome nerdy, nerd out. We dive into data. We do all of this technology stuff. We love being nerdy. So please don't shy away from being nerdy. Number 2, I want to send a special shout out to Vinny, who we work with for a very long time now. Vinny didn't believe me that the average profit margins were between 3 and 5%. So Vinny, we have proof here. Tim has gone ahead and verified what we know to be true, that profit margins are very, very slim. So sorry, go ahead, Jose.
Well, I think that there's two pieces here that I'm kind of moved by. One is the rewarding piece, which I can definitely relate to. I mean, passion that like went 10x after and throughout the pandemic, which I can only imagine your stories. And the other one is that I'm very curious how granular you get to this analysis and how you help them and how you consult on all of this. So I'm curious if you can walk us through how you conduct a profitability analysis for a menu and how this analysis can influence menu design or menu pricing strategies.
Yeah, that's a great question, but that's usually about depending on where they're at when they come on board, when we onboard them, that getting granular on the menu profitability is sometimes 3 to 4 months down the road. The first thing we got to lay is the groundwork. We got to make sure they've got their accounting system set up correctly so that they are tracking the right metrics and they are tracking prime costs correctly. And you would think that's a given. Trust me, it's not. A lot of times the financial statements they have are very vague and not granular at all. And then we work with them to understand, your food costs, your wine, beer, liquor, non-alcoholic beverage, all those costs need to be analyzed individually. One of the things I say is the two most important things every restaurant business needs is a budget and detailed recipe costing cards. What are the two things most of them have when they come on board with us? Most of them don't have are a budget and detailed recipe costing cards. So if we first start with getting the system set up correctly, working with them to build a budget, to have a vision on where they are today, and if they make incremental improvements, what that means to the bottom line, and start working with them on low-hanging fruit to control food costs, control liquor costs, and then we get more granular in, and it's legwork on their part, and it's some heavy lifting in what used to be called detailed recipe costing cards. You see the actual paper cards where they used to detail out. We get them to that data, and they have to use, in today's world, software to track those detailed recipe costs. Once they have that, then we can start to analyze on the menu what each menu item over a period, a week or a month, based on the quantity that they sell of that item, what's the contribution margin for that individual item on the menu? How many dollars does that contribute to the bottom line every week or month? Then they can get into understanding if they change prices, what impact does that have automatically over the next month?
Right.
And that's how granular we can get. But there's got to be some legwork and some groundwork before we even get to that level.
Right. Makes sense. Speaking to restaurateurs, I find that some really know their menu, like to the point that they can tell you right away, I make 7 on this one, I make 3.5. I find it fascinating because we have a passion for prices on menus. It's extremely powerful to work with someone like that because it just saves, and it's such more a powerful conversation. And then from there, you can actually do pricing strategies or think even in terms of that, or moving the most popular. I always try to think about it like, correct me if I'm wrong, but this is what I've seen, is that usually it's like a Pareto logic where the top 20% of the top items may contribute like 80% of the bottom line.
Right. And that's where we want them to focus first on, if you're going to do any price changes, let's focus on those top contribution margin, dollar-wise and percentage-wise, your top sellers, and make sure you're getting the margins you need to have on that. And the concept of what you guys do with the dynamic pricing, I find that fascinating. It's part of the technology that's out there today that even small restaurant owners need to start to embrace. Costs are changing so quickly these days. They need to be looking at that pricing weekly, if not daily.
Right. I'll share a quick story. So through an experiment, we found or identified some of the top items that should be managed in a particular way because of the level of elasticity. And by the time I followed up with this restaurateur, she had chosen to do, finally, because it's a new quarter now, to do a price update. And I was fascinated to see how instinctively she was able to choose the proper ones that most of them we were going to recommend anyway. Now, what the price change was and all of that, we didn't get into details yet, but it was fascinating.
Yeah, they know their business, but it's good to have the proof in the numbers as well.
The devil is in the details, as they say.
That's right.
Tim, could you explain how to master prime costs? We're doing a lot of costing here, right? So Could you talk about how to master prime costs to optimize profit margin in the context of a restaurant and give some tips on how they can be managed more effectively?
Yeah, a lot of what we were just talking about in having that detailed menu costing understanding and understanding that, as prices increase, as their costs increase, their product costs increase, what does that do to the profitability, and making sure they're keeping up with those changes. And that's on the product cost side. On the labor side, I don't know if anybody can master that. It's not an exact science. It's a hard thing to manage. But there again, they have to be using software. They need to be using software to understand and have pro formas on templates on every type of schedule needed, from a bare bones schedule on the slowest week of the year to the most busiest week of the year. What does that schedule look like? And in the software out there today, they can build those templates. I think one of the things that Dine Pricing does is help them with predictive analytics and understanding what's coming in terms of sales. That's so valuable to understand and predict whether you've got a keen eye on the weather that's coming in the next week, or an event, a local event happening in your town, what the competition is doing. So you have a good forecasted sales number. You know where your labor schedule should be at to match that sales number. And then it's always about analysis after the fact, looking back at last week. This is what we scheduled for hours, how many hours actually were. This is what we thought sales were going to be. What were the sales actually? How did that fit together? Did the team look overwhelmed, or were they standing around playing Wordle on their phones? So it's always an ongoing analysis, and it's always a moving target.
Yeah, you mentioned software a couple of times. Is there a couple of programs that you would recommend for operators?
We're software agnostic, so to
Gotcha.
speak. I mean, we have a couple point of sale systems that we really like. We have some scheduling softwares that we really like. Heartland's a great point of sale system. We really like the way the reporting comes out of Heartland. 7 Shifts is a great scheduling software. They've got a lot of power. We like 7 Shifts because it helps us with tip management. What we use, and one of the things that we're almost a deal breaker, is if they will not use Margin Edge, we may not work with them. Are you familiar with Margin Edge? Are you familiar with Bill.com as a bill pay system? So Margin Edge is they scan all their vendor docs, either take a picture or scan all their vendor docs, upload it to Margin Edge, and they parse out by line item the costs. How much an avocado costs, how much a prime rib, prime filet costs. Every single line item is costed out, and then it gives you price change history as well. Through Margin Edge, you can start to build those detailed recipe costing cards in the software. It's a fantastic piece of software that I think almost every restaurant owner should be using. So I'm sorry, I didn't mean that to be a commercial for Margin Edge.
No. We do it all the time. We talk
Yeah.
about 7 Shifts all of the time. We may be having the CEO of 7 Shifts. There's some scheduling issues going on, but we're in early discussions with having the CEO of 7 Shifts on the show here. Fantastic software. We've heard nothing but great things, and we can't wait to talk to them. We definitely nerd out on all the different softwares, and we really kind of love that. So I want to take it back a sec here. You're saying
Okay.
that you probably wouldn't work with a restaurant that's not using some inventory management software. Do you get some pushback on that? Because the restaurants we talk to, it's kind of hit and miss on who's digitizing their inventory and who's not. How is that working for you?
Yeah, we do get some pushback on that, but I'm a small firm, and I do a lot of due diligence when we onboard, when we're talking to prospects and going through the proposal process. I want to make sure that they want to change, but are they willing to go through the pain of change? Because we work with them, we're in their systems daily, and we're communicating with them weekly. So it has to be a great working relationship. There might be pushback in the beginning, but are they willing to take on the pain of change in the short term if that's going to pay the benefits in the long term? And I'm sure you guys deal with a lot of the same thing when you're asking people to adopt a new software.
It's difficult for sure. I mean, the industry as a whole has gone through so much transformation. So even some MarTech or some financial software or some inventory software, if it's not being used, then there's definitely some pushback, because we know how busy our restaurateurs are. And to have to learn something new, it's going to offset their day. It's going to offset each minute that they're spending back of house, front of house. But it's for their benefit. And we want to look at these things on a really granular level, like you were saying, and it's going to help them for sure.
I think they're getting better informed and a little bit more curious. I think that the pandemic had a huge impact on that in the sense that they finally paid attention to technology. I mean, having been around technology and the restaurateur reluctance to pay attention for the last, it's going to be about more than 12 years. When we used to say, oh, what, for that to happen is going to require a pandemic. So that
A once in a lifetime occurrence. Yeah.
what are some strategies of resilience and adaptability that have successfully helped your clients, especially during economic uncertainty?
Yeah, to me, the biggest resilience tool they can have is a budget, a financial plan, and utilizing everything we've talked about in understanding their revenues, their anticipated revenues, their growth plans, understanding the detail of their prime costs, systems they can implement to improve their prime costs. And going through the budget process for a lot of business owners, it's the first time the CEO or the owner actually looks at the detailed line item. But we force them to. We make them go through that with us. The detailed line items of the profit and loss statement and really understand what is in each of those line items. Once they have that understanding, we can actually do some planning. Here's the growth that you're anticipating. Here's the things that you can implement to improve your prime costs. And if you do that, look at the impact on the bottom line. So the budget is a great planning tool, and it's also a great motivational tool and gets them excited about making the changes they need to make to improve the bottom line. And when things go sideways, if you have a living, breathing budget forecast, projection, whatever you want to call it, you can then go to that and understand, okay, it looks like revenue is going to be down 20% or 70% during the pandemic. What moves do we have to make to survive that? And how soon do we have to do that? It's not exact, but it's the first go-to place to understand what's happening to us if, God forbid, things really go sideways.
Wow. I bet you were really busy.
Yeah. I thought over the course of my many years, I thought tax season was rough. 2020 through fall of 2021, I've never worked harder in my life.
My goodness.
Yeah, but it was also rewarding. Yeah, Jose, were well.
Same here. We have a first party online ordering, like a white label online ordering solution. And we ended up, it's called modern online ordering. And same, I mean, I worked every day of the week over 16 hours, especially the first 6 months, but we were getting calls from all over the world. And fortunately, Gordon was able to join me and help out.
Great.
I'm here to help, Jose.
Yeah. So I sold my tax practice, and a year later, the pandemic hit. I thought I was going to have some downtime for a few years, but no, that didn't. But it was very rewarding too, because some of our clients, many of our clients, if they pulled the right levers, made the right moves during the pandemic, they ended up with actually more working capital at the end of the pandemic than they had at the beginning. So they had to make a lot of tough choices and a lot of tough decisions on staffing and team and even key people, but they got through it. They're actually at a stronger balance sheet coming out of it.
Yeah, the industry has actually bounced back extremely well, transitioning their entire operation to takeout and delivery throughout that period was such a monumental shift. And there were so many that ended up shuttering. Really tough time, but also you really saw this industry come together and problem solve. And you saw the real innovative owners and operators think outside the box because they literally had to. It's an incredible transformation for this industry. I think we're seeing a lot of those businesses that made it through really doing well now. And I think it's just a wonderful success story for so many of these operators.
Yeah. And Jose, your online ordering software, I'm sure was a game changer for many of them. And they're stronger today for a forced implementation, if you will, but they're better positioned today because they did that.
And, it was extremely hard work, but it was so rewarding because people would call crying, concerned, and it was the phone, online, it was everywhere. The lead gen pages, they were coming from all over the world. They were desperate. They saw a light. We guided them. We helped them. We launched them. And this man was not sleeping. If anything, maybe a little bit too much wine.
That's awesome.
There's financial literacy, right? That a lot of business owners need to familiarize themselves with. But now also there's an e-commerce literacy that Jose and I find ourselves educating and informing about, because it's not just the in-store business that you're used to. Now, all of a sudden, your restaurant is an e-commerce business. How does that work? What's the psychology? What are the steps involved? And so there's this education as well when it comes to selling online and all of the tools and solutions that are available. It's an ongoing lesson to be learned, and we're all learning together, which is really, really cool.
Right, right. And some of them are also trying to understand on that online ordering from a capacity standpoint, how do we handle it? And if it's Friday night from 5:30 until 8 o'clock, do we shut it down because we want to take care of our customers in the dining room? And it's different decisions for different restaurants, but I'm sure you've gone through a lot of that as well.
And we talk about that all the time, and we talk to operators who get too busy and they turn off this revenue stream, and the solution that we've built enables them to never have to turn it off again. There's things you can do to enable to keep both channels open. So just shifting gears a little bit here, Tim, can you talk about some of the common elements that you believe every restaurant's financial plan should include when creating a strategy?
That budget, that projection, forecast, whatever you want to call it, in understanding what's the vision for their restaurant. And does that vision include, we're going to open up a second location in a year or 3 locations in a year? How does that all fall into place from not just a profitability standpoint, from a staffing standpoint, and from really cash flow as well? Because opening up a restaurant is a cash flow side. There's no question about it. And I've seen too many restaurateurs get in trouble with siphoning from one restaurant to survive the second one to get it open and up and running. And that's not a healthy way to do that. So the key elements are everything we've been talking about: understanding where your prime costs are, having a vision and a plan to improve those to get them to the point where they should be for your restaurant, because you're never going to survive if your prime costs aren't under control, and just understanding cash flow as you grow.
Absolutely. Jose?
Well, on that note, what do you see as the biggest financial challenges and opportunities for restaurant owners in the next few years? Are there new trends or technologies that you think will significantly have an impact?
Yeah, I love technology. I embrace technology, and I always have tried to be someone on the front end of that, even in the way that we conduct our accounting business. What I see the biggest challenge right now is the fast changing cost structure. Costs are changing so fast, and they have to keep up with those costs and keep up with their pricing so that they're continue to hit the food cost percentage points they need to hit, as well as the beer, wine, liquor, non-alcoholic beverage. So tools like what AI-enabled tools are the biggest thing that my target market, independently owned restaurateurs, are going to have to start to embrace. And they really need to embrace the technology and the AI tools that allows them to compete with the big boys in terms of analytics, understanding what's coming from projecting out sales next week, next month, and understanding through one of the tools I've already talked about, Margin Edge, where their costs are and how their costs are changing and what pricing changes they need to put into place. That's the biggest challenge that's going to start happening. What you guys emphasize is dynamic pricing. It can't be, okay, once a quarter or every 6 months, we'll look at our menu and see if we need to change prices. That's not going to work, especially in the short term.
Agreed. I think that one of the main things that this show always reminds our listeners about is that watch the big boys. What are they doing? Because one day it's going to come to a restaurant near you, and it's going to be either you or your competitor across the street.
Yeah, it's about taking a proactive approach instead of being reactive to these peaks and valleys. And that's what this type of software, whether it's dynamic pricing or scheduling software or costing software, it enables you to plan better and look into what could possibly be happening and help you prepare. So yeah, we're all about it, Tim, and really glad to hear that you're really up on your software, and these tools are really going to help operators.
And just one other thought, it is that the independent operators are more nimble than the big boys. They can make decisions and move faster than the big boys. They're not adopting these tools any faster than the smaller guys. So I can do that. It gives them that competitive advantage.
Absolutely. It gives them an opportunity to test quicker and eliminate solutions that aren't working for them and continue to iterate and move forward.
Yeah. Faster decision making, less cost.
Gotta be nimble, gotta stay lean, gotta be nimble. Listen, that's all the time we have for this episode today. Tim, now's your time to plug away. Where can restaurateurs and operators connect with you? What's your platform of choice?
Oh boy, I'm everywhere. LinkedIn, Facebook, under Financial Optics, and my own Tim Sernett on LinkedIn as well as Financial Optics. And the website is simply financialopticshq.com. Look for me anywhere. I'm happy to talk. I love talking to restaurant owners. I love talking to independently owned businesses. Look forward to any conversations.
That's fantastic. And we'll have your details in the show's description. Speaking of plugs, this podcast is sponsored by Dine Pricing, real-time restaurant profitability. Dine Pricing uses artificial intelligence to improve restaurant profitability by dynamically updating menus across digital channels like Uber Eats, DoorDash, and Grubhub. Again, that's all the time we have for this episode. Thanks again to Tim for joining us. Until next week, say goodbye, Jose.
Thank you, Tim. Goodbye, Jose.
Tim, that was fantastic. Thank you so much. It was really helpful for not just our audience, but also for Jose and I. It sounds like we're really in line with the idea of leveraging software to help businesses prepare for the unknown. That was so great, and I can't wait to have you on the show again.